Politicians ramping up the rhetoric ahead of the midterm elections.
Joe Biden's 5 million illegal aliens are on the verge of replacing you.
Polls show voters worrying most about the economy and soaring inflation.
The Democrats were warned by Larry Summers, by other Democrat economists, you do this, you're going to fire up inflation.
Individuals were hurting, families were hurting, businesses were hurting. We passed the CARES Act, which the senators supported.
And I really wish Tim Ryan had stood up to his party on this vote.
You were calling Trump America's Hitler. Then you kissed his ass.
In just 18 days, voters finally get to try to do something about all of that. Republicans, they're disciplined. Every candidate, every message hitting on one thing: fear, inflation, immigration, crime. And while they're not offering any policy solutions, these issues go right to the kitchen table and they scare us. But scarier than all of those things is democracy at risk and in peril. Without a respected rule of law, we have nothing, which is what Democrats are trying to explain. But here's the problem. Voters, they're not thinking about democracy when they're at the gas station or the grocery store. So I want to know, how do Democrats play this? And we have a great roundup of people here to cover this and more. Here tonight, stand-up comedian Pete Dominick, Hayes Brown, MSNBC Daily columnist and editor, Jonathan Greenblatt, CEO and National Director of the Anti-Defamation League, and my dear friend, NBC News correspondent Stephanie Gosk. Welcome to you all.
Thank you.
I want everybody to chime in, but Hayes, to you first. Some of the arguments Republicans are making aren't even true, but the fear is real. So what do Democrats do?
I mean, that's one of the things that is why Republicans are choosing these issues to run on, because so often things like immigration, crime, even inflation, it's more based on the vibes, based on people, how they feel, than the actual policies at play. You'll note that no Republican is saying, well, here's what we do to actually fix inflation, because there is nothing that Congress even can really do at this point. It's up to the Federal Reserve. There are steps that could be taken in theory that will lead us to recession, but no Republican wants to come out and say, well, if you want us to fight inflation, we have to encourage a recession. No one wants to actually talk about what would need to be done to actually move forward on these issues. And I think Democrats have started to do a pretty good job of calling Republicans out on their lack of having anything that could actually tangibly be done about these issues. But Republicans, they continually push forward these soundbite clips that make people feel upset, feel scared, feel like they are not in control of their own lives.
That's not new, though. This is not new. I'm old enough to remember weapons of mass destruction in Iraq and so many other lies that activate people. And this has always been led by the right-wing media, and then Republicans in office have to follow along and take their marching orders from the most influential people on the right. Well, I think this is not about messaging, not with 18 days out at this point. And Democrats are never going to be able to be as effective using fear, because we like to use nuance and have a longer conversation, talk policy. Right now in my local Democrats, I'm telling people, I'm just going to go knocking on doors and say, do you like clean drinking water? Because it's in peril. Does that matter to you? It's true. It's effective. It might work. But right now, what Democrats should be doing, what I'm certainly doing, is organizing. It's not about the message at this point. People know who they're going to be voting for. If you're not part of the solution, you're going to be a part of the problem.
You're 3 weeks out from the election. If you're going to do hyperbole, this is the time to do it, right? Republicans are going all in. Let's make it sound crazy, and then we can blame Biden and the Democrats. Sounds like a good message. Doesn't matter if it's true. And for that matter, Democrats do a little bit of this as well. I mean, this is the season for hyperbole. I would give Americans a little bit more credit that they know that's what their politicians are doing right now, sadly.
But what happens to society, right? When the whole goal to motivate voters is to prey upon fear, is to sow distrust in our minds. What does that do to culture?
So I would tell you, I think disinformation and certainly hate is corrosive to democracy. So when they go to the hyperbole and they say these things that are totally outrageous, it alienates voters, it scares them, and that undermines the civic fabric.
Well, yes and no, because some of the voters that they're trying to reach, who they're trying to turn out, especially on the right, are motivated by hate. They are motivated by the things that they're being spoon-fed. They are motivated by the idea that there's an invasion happening on the southern border right now, and not thinking about.
But then let's go one step further and really talk about hate, because it's more than hyperbole. We are seeing a spike in anti-Semitic, racist rants, not at the fringe. It's from political leaders, cultural leaders. Kanye West is off of Twitter because of his anti-Semitic comments.
It's at my school board. It's at my
Donald
school.
Trump is now being criticized for his anti-Semitic speech, and you are seeing more and more members of the GOP heading into the midterms saying things out loud and not being condemned for it That's hate speech.
We
How
literally
bad
had
is
that
it?
today with the Mastriano campaign. I mean, Doug Mastriano, running for the governorship in Pennsylvania, has repeatedly invoked anti-Semitic tropes. He went on Gab, which is a nasty cesspool, of slander. He took money. He gave money to the founder of Gab, who's a real piece of work, a white supremacist, Andrew Torba. Bring all that together, then today, a spokesperson for the campaign was calling out Josh Shapiro, his opponent, calling him a secular Jew. This campaign that has specialized in stereotypes and slander, criticizing the Jewish person they're running against. It's crazy.
Okay,
it's not
we'll go
normal.
from politics to pop culture. Kanye West. I haven't heard Adidas drop him yet.
Adidas hasn't dropped him. Balenciaga just did today, but didn't mention that it's the anti-Semitism and the racism that motivated them to do so. This, Stephanie, is what we've talked about in your show before. It's the normalization of hate. It just becomes part of the kind of public conversation.
But Adidas, a German-based company, doesn't feel the need.
A German-based company that outfitted the Hitler Youth, that has deep, deep relationship to the Third Reich because it was there, making uniforms for the Wehrmacht.
But when you think about where we are right now, the norms have been thrown out, right? You're not criticized for coming out and saying these things.
Yeah.
You don't pay any price. In fact, you might even get some votes. When you talk about immigration, we can have a very good conversation about immigration that's reasonable, and you could be talking to someone who has very conservative views about it. Yeah. But that's not what scares people.
That's
what
right.
scares people is coming out and start using the word replacement, right? And then that gets people to vote, right?
And we're seeing that too on the LGBT front as well. I mean, like the way that the groomer conversation has sprung up. I mean, I was actually in high school during the 2000s era when they were trying to push forward the constitutional amendment to ban gay marriage. And so the fact that we're looped back around almost to the same sort of levels of homophobia and now transphobia being pushed, especially on teachers, pushed on students who are just trying to live their lives and trying to be able to exist without, being dunked on and being called a pedophile. The fact that we've looped back around to that is just really kind of horrifying to me.
Yeah, we've made a lot of progress in so many ways in our lifetimes on all of these issues. And over the past few years, we're definitely taking these steps back. I mean, Stephanie talks about the immigration issue, and Jonathan knows as well as anybody about what Trump's caravan invasion did. That was what happened at the Tree of Life Synagogue. That's what animated that guy in Pittsburgh. And we're only going to see more of this the more it gets spouted. We have to have a conversation where certain people aren't invited. You can't come here. You can't sell that if you're selling that kind of hatred.
But then it all gets looped back around to this like nebulous free speech argument. And that's, I feel like, a losing war that people are trying to like frame the terms around right now. You say anything about like the actual content of the speech, and instead they come back and you're like, well, why are you trying to cancel me? Why are you trying to...
What's more dangerous, a cultural icon like Kanye or a political leader doing things like this?
They're dangerous in different ways. So Kanye, with his 31 million followers, is incredibly dangerous. And when people in the entertainment industry are afraid to call him out, because what's been most deafening is the failure of other entertainers, other people from hip hop or other parts of culture, to say a word in response to what he said. But don't make no mistake, the bully pulpit of a Donald Trump, the bully pulpit of a political candidate, is something also very powerful, and different kinds of people take their cues from them.
There used to be a price to pay. You
That's
say
right.
this stuff, you pay the price. And whether it's in the entertainment industry or whether it's politicians that come out and say, you know what, dude, you can't say that. And then you're out. That doesn't happen anymore.
Why?
Instead, they're just silent.
The Overton window's been pushed, and we're all like boiling frogs, if you will, or in the water. It's heating up.
The
it's heating up,
inflection point was 2016. We are far past that. We are in current danger right now, and we have to blame the media too. I mean, anybody who's inviting Kanye West onto their show is part of the problem. I'll do anything I can for ratings, even if he's in the backseat of a car.
But then this is the issue. All the time I say we're not going to talk about these issues because by giving a provocateur attention, you're feeding them.
We can talk about it. We can't invite him on.
But if we ignore them, then doesn't that just let the problem fester and grow?
Yeah, and you see that with these sort of politicians as well, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, et cetera, where you don't want to have to cover them, but because they are national figures, and because even though Marjorie Taylor Greene, she is not influential in terms of legislation, she is not out there.
Not one committee assignment.
Not one committee assignment.
She will be.
She will be getting one in the next Congress if the Republicans win, it's true. But she is someone that should be on the margins, on the fringe, but instead she's being embraced because she can help with fundraising, she can help with political messaging. messaging. So the fact that she can take this platform, this lack of platform almost, and be in a position to actually help put forward legislation in the next Congress, terrifying.